Good morning. My name is Ciro Sepulveda. I will be your professor in this course on the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And before we get started, I just want to say a few things about the nature of the course. The course may be a little different from what you usually take because I don't give any quizzes, I don't give midterms, and I don't give final examinations. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to do any work. In fact, in my opinion, you probably will do more work than if I were to give all these exams. I feel that exams open the door for students to just work for passing the exam, which requires not too much profound thought. You memorize a bunch of stuff, then you regurgitate it for the exam, and then you forget it for the rest of your life. I would like to get you to think more profoundly about the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, not only because the history of the church is important, but because history is really not about stuff in the past. It's really about us in the present. He who studies history or she who studies history is really studying what that past has to do with our reality now. And that provokes a lot of thinking. And so all of my assignments for this class are designed to get you to think a little more profoundly, not only about stuff that happened many years ago, but how that stuff is impacting who you are and what you do today. So I basically have 3 assignments that you have to turn in every week designed to do that. Now let me explain each one of them. The first one is a timeline. Every week you will read a certain number of pages in the texts and then produce a timeline, which will be a 2-page double-spaced document, hopefully in Word, which has a list of dates and a little explanation about that date. Basically, the 3 things that I want for each date is the date itself, then what happened on that date, and then why that date is important in the history of the Adventist Church and in your life. Let me give you an example. In 1825, the state of New York created the Erie Canal, started building the Erie Canal. So the first thing you would put down on the paper is 1825. The second thing you would put on the paper is the building of the Erie Canal. And then the third thing would be why that date is important. It's important, I believe, because that canal, which linked Albany, New York to Buffalo, New York, created the most important highway in the 19th century for the movement of people from the East Coast, basically New York City, to the interior of the country. So millions of people and goods were transported along the canal, and it's along that canal that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is birthed. The first center of activity for Adventists was in Rochester, New York, in a house which could If you walked out the door of the house on Hope Street, you could see the canal on the other side of the street. And Adventism is really centered in there before the Civil War for several years. So it's important in the birth of Adventism. Now, I spoke quite a bit of several sentences about the canal, but all you have to say in your assignments, 1825, the date, the building of the Erie Canal, and then it became the center of Adventism when the Adventist Church was birthed. That's all you have to do. 2 sentences after that date. Now, as you noticed, the date I gave you right now, the 1825 date, in many people's opinion has nothing to do, the building of canal has nothing to do with the birth of Adventism. But when you start thinking about it, when you start studying the history and look at where it was located, it becomes important. And if the Erie Canal hadn't been there, maybe the Adventist Church wouldn't have been birthed. And those of you that are Adventist in the class, your life would have been very much different if you had not become an Adventist. So you see, there's a link between the date, the event, and the Adventist Church and your own life. Let me give you just one more example. 1844. As most of you know, in 1844, William Miller predicted that Jesus would come for a second time. So what you would do in your timeline, you would put 1844, prediction that Jesus would come for a second time by William Miller. And then the third part, which is extremely important, is how is that date important for Adventism and for you? Obviously, if it wasn't for 1844, there would be no Adventist Church, because most of the founders of the Adventist Church, in an effort to explain why Jesus didn't come, they created what we now know as the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Okay, so that's the first assignment you would have to do every week. The second assignment is what I call an image gallery. And here, in your reading and through the internet, whatever sources you can find, I want you to look for 12 images. Put them in a Word document, and after each image, just tell me why that image is important in the birth and development of the Adventist Church. Let me give you an example. In the first week of our class, there are no photographs, because photography isn't invented until the 1860s. So before that, you will be looking for paintings, for drawings, for maps, for graphs, any image that would give you insight into the birth of Adventism. So let us say that you found an image of a freight train or a locomotive from the 1840s. Okay, so that image you place in your image gallery, and then you tell me why that image is important. A locomotive or a train from the 1840s, 50s, or 60s, which is the period of this first week of your work, became central to the growth and the spread of Adventism, because up until the locomotives and the canals, most people lived on the East Coast. and to go to the interior took many, many, many weeks and sometimes months. So an image of a locomotive is important in the understanding of the spread and the ability of Adventist preachers in those early years to get from one part of the country to another part of the country quickly and allow for the birth of Adventism. Okay, so assignment 1 is a timeline. Assignment 2 is an image gallery. And assignment 3 is a written assignment. Each week you'll do a written assignment. The first 2 weeks you'll do a summary. The third week you'll do an essay. The fourth week you will not turn in anything, but you will be doing research for a research paper which will be turned in the fifth week. So those are the assignments that you will have to do for this class. Each week, timeline, image gallery, and a written assignment. Once again, I would like to welcome you to the class. I hope this becomes an enriching experience for you. I hope I push you into critical thinking about the world of the Adventist, but also about your own life and what you're doing and the impact that the things that we'll study have on your own experience.